In August of 2022, law enforcement in Tucson, Arizona, was running surveillance on 49-year-old Francisco Javier Garza regarding his active felony arrest warrants for home invasion and robbery. Garza was a career criminal with past convictions for drug possession and vehicle theft. In 2001, he was jailed for 11 years after he was convicted of 6 counts of armed robbery, and following his release, committed another armed robbery that resulted in a 7.5-year sentence. On August the 25th of 2022, a Tucson police SWAT team tracked Garza to a Circle K and waited for him to emerge from the store. While he was crossing the parking lot, officers approached him with their weapons drawn, ordering him to get on the ground. Garza took off running, prompting Officer Barry Pedersen to release a canine unit named Cairo. While he was fleeing, Garza brandished a pistol out of a bag strapped across his chest. He only made it a few feet before Cairo took him down. In the moments that followed, as seen in body cam footage, the suspect pointed the weapon at the canine unit and at members of the SWAT team. Officer Pedersen and Officer Ernest Ortiz shot the man 5 times, killing him. The entire incident had unfolded in less than half a minute. Garza's Taurus G3 9mm semi-automatic pistol was recovered from the scene and determined to have ammunition in the magazine and 1 round in the chamber. The authorities launched an investigation to determine if the use of lethal force was justified, but preliminary findings suggested that the officers wouldn't be charged. Number 7. Incident in Merwood. In the spring of 2024, Australian police officers responded to reports of an assault at Knox Park in the New South Wales town of Merwood. While investigating the scene, they were approached by a 50-year-old man. He was reportedly issued a move-on direction, as he was reportedly hindering the police's efforts. Shortly thereafter, the man returned to the scene, placed his belongings on the marked cop car's hood, and attempted to get inside the vehicle through the open door. The 2 police officers at the scene promptly pulled him back, but the man became aggressive and grabbed one of them by the arm. In a split second, the cop punched him in the face, knocking him back into the police vehicle. The suspect's sunglasses, which had been resting on his bucket hat, were sent flying by the blow. In the moments that followed, the officer and his colleague took the man down and arrested him. He was taken to the Tweed Heads police station and charged with unlawfully entering a vehicle, assaulting a police officer, and resisting arrest. Number 6. Emiliano Medina. On July the 24th of 2018, Officer Austin Williams from the Provo Police Department in Utah went to Sam's Club to conduct a welfare check on a man who was reportedly wandering through the parking lot, disoriented while asking people for water. Williams encountered the person in question, 34-year-old Emiliano Medina, and asked him if he needed assistance. Medina initially waved Williams off but then turned around. The officer later said he quickly pointed at my side and made a gun motion with his hand and pointed it at his head. Moments later, Medina reached for the officer's gun. A struggle ensued and Medina punched Williams in the head, briefly dropping him to the ground. He tried to flee, but 2 bystanders who'd watched the scene unfold from a nearby car intervened. One man cut Medina off with a shoulder check, while the other grabbed him from behind in a bear hug, lifted him in the air, spun him around and slammed him on the ground. Williams then moved in and made the arrest. The officer would later say of the Good Samaritan's intervention, "I was like, holy cow, that was NFL hardest hits kind of stuff." A clip of the altercation was uploaded to the YouTube channel Police Activity, where it was viewed over 4 million times. In a Facebook post, Provo police thanked the man who'd taken down the suspect, writing, "We take pride in serving and protecting in Provo, so we are grateful to the unknown person who returned the favor and helped us safely take a dangerous person into custody." Medina was believed to have been suffering from excited delirium brought about by methamphetamine consumption. He was booked at the Utah County Jail on multiple charges that included a first-degree felony charge of disarming a police officer, as well as assault on an officer, and 2 charges of possession or use of a controlled substance. Number 5. Keith Dean. On June the 6th of 2017, under unclear circumstances, Keith Dean was walking naked down the street in Houston, Texas, with a stolen pesticide sprayer in hand. A Good Samaritan offered him a towel to cover up, but an agitated Dean asked him for his watch instead. The man obliged, thinking it would calm him down. 49-year-old Dean then ran into a metro train at Fannin South Transit Center. 2 officers arrived at the scene, and when the doors were opened, one of them tried to coax the naked suspect off the train. Dean, however, refused to do so and deployed the pesticide sprayer on the cop. The latter maintained his composure and quickly took the nozzle out of Dean's hand while keeping his taser aimed at him. Moments later, Dean swung and landed a hard slap to the officer's face, which sent his sunglasses flying off his head. Dean attempted a second strike but was shot with the taser and he dropped to the ground. He crawled and lunged at the officer but was shot again and subdued. Dean was handcuffed, and the incident ended without any serious injuries being reported. Ben Marquina, a bystander who'd recorded the entire exchange on his cell phone, praised the cop for showing restraint after being attacked. As a consequence of his bizarre antics, Dean was charged with 2 counts of assault of a public servant. Number 4. St. Kilder fight. On February the 23rd of 2019, Australian woman Kayla Potts attended a birthday party in St. Kilda, accompanied by her fiancé and the father of her children, Jack Holdcroft, as well as by her cousin, Philip O'Donnell, her brother, Trent, and others. After the party, they went to a Fitzroy Street nightclub. At around 3 a.m., Kayla's brother, Trent, became involved in an argument with another group. A transgender woman tried to defuse the situation, but after an exchange of words, Trent kicked her in the groin region. The police were called in. Senior constables Adam McKenzie and Darren Shepherd arrived at the scene as the group was preparing to leave in a taxi. They asked to speak with Trent, but he refused, saying he was going home. SC McKenzie grabbed his elbow and tried escorting him to a footpath, but the man broke free and took off running, resulting in a brief pursuit. After Trent and the policeman crossed Fitzroy Street, they began fighting each other. SC Shepherd made his way to the scene and tried to assist in the arrest. Bystanders from across the street started recording on their cell phones after the melee had come to involve other members of the birthday party group. 25-year-old Kayla grabbed and struck SC McKenzie from behind, trying to get him off her brother. The policeman hit her in the head with his Maglite flashlight, and the strike let off a loud whack sound that was audible in the footage. Kayla dropped to the ground and was later pictured with blood covering her face. Jack, Kayla's fiancé, saw what happened and instantly reacted by taking McKenzie down, punching and kicking him. He also spear-tackled Shepherd when he attempted to intervene. A skirmish ensued between the 2 policemen, Trent and Jack. Philip O'Donnell then arrived at the scene and joined in the brawl with vigor and apparent enthusiasm. He struck both policemen and at one point grabbed SC Shepherd and repeatedly slammed his head into the concrete, rendering him unconscious. Philip also punched him repeatedly. He struck the policeman while he was out cold, and after he'd gained his senses and gotten back to his feet. A court would determine that Philip had thrown and landed the most blows in the altercation. Another member of the birthday group that actively participated in the violence was Jake Mitchell, who'd reportedly kicked McKenzie while he was down. The group was arrested in the incident's wake, and the brawl story made headlines across the country. Shepherd and McKenzie were left with multiple bruises and abrasions, while the former also suffered a torn bicep. During the legal proceedings that followed, Trent, Philip, Jack, and Jake pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including assaulting an emergency worker on duty and affray. The sentencing judge denounced the extremely ugly and violent affray, telling the group, "You behaved like a pack of animals. You in particular, Mr. O'Donnell." The latter received the heaviest sentence of 15 months in prison with a minimum of 8 months served before he would become eligible for parole. Trent was given 3 months in prison in combination with a community work order. Jack and Jake were both handed 2-year community correction orders. Number 3. Alex Lowry. In February of 2021, a video began circulating online of a violent police arrest that occurred in New York City at a Lower Manhattan subway station, as 3 NYPD officers held 50-year-old Alex Lowry pinned to the ground. A fourth repeatedly punched him in the face, shouting, "Give me your hand." The officer dealt nearly a dozen blows to the man's head. Many online users were enraged by the video, but the police stated that it didn't show the full story. The NYPD had been called to the scene because Lowry was smoking a cigarette at the station, in clear violation of MTA rules. Lowry was escorted up a flight of stairs and towards the exit, but he began struggling and spat at the officers before he attacked them. He headbutted one cop and punched another before he and an officer went tumbling down the stairs. Lowry reportedly threw another punch after they reached the bottom. He was then wrestled to the ground and beaten into submission. Only the latter sequence of events was captured on video and shared online, without the full context of the situation. Lowry was taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of assaulting a police officer, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and he was also cited for smoking. He'd previously spent time in state prison for holding a knife at a woman's throat at a Manhattan train station. One of the cops who arrested him in the most recent incident suffered lacerations to his head and knee injuries, while another hurt his elbow. It was unclear if the officer seen punching Lowry in the face faced any charges. Today's topic was requested by Kate Towson 123 and 1985 Seraphim. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. incident in Croydon. A machete attack against 2 police officers in Croydon, South London, took place on the morning of December the 30th of 2021 from a distance. Roofer Robert Ball captured the incident on his cell phone. A 23-year-old man whose identity wasn't revealed was stopped as he was riding a motorcycle in Cherry Tree Green. The balaclava-wearing man became violent during his interaction with the police. A broad daylight brawl ensued and he took down one officer who was seen in the footage clinging to the suspect's legs as multiple hard punches rained down upon him. The battered cop rose to his feet as his colleague approached the suspect while radioing for support. The masked thug pulled back and brandished a machete. Ball later told a media outlet, "The blade must have been as long as your forearm." I was like, what the hell? The weapon was still sheathed when the thug used it to repeatedly strike the officer he'd previously taken down. The latter used a taser, but it initially failed to connect as the suspect swatted it away with the machete. The second officer then pepper sprayed him. A redeployment of the taser proved effective and the machete wielder was finally brought down and taken into custody. One officer suffered a concussion and the second officer suffered a suspected fracture during the melee. If these people resisting the law weren't aggravating enough, then take a look at it from the other side of the fence in our previous release of When Abusing Power Goes Wrong, coming up right after number 1. Stay tuned. Number 1. Incident in China. In February of 2015, Xiao Chen-li and her husband, Saiying Xue, were pulled over by law enforcement in the city of Wenzhou in China's Zhejiang province. The couple were driving home with friends. After all of them had partaken in copious amounts of alcohol, a massive brawl involving multiple officers ensued during the traffic stop. Footage showed 30-year-old Chen-li and Xue, aged 28, both topless as they grappled with the police. The couple and their friends appeared to struggle with their balance during the confrontation. Xue was at one point taken down by the police. Chen-li momentarily retreated and inexplicably decided to pull her jeans down to her knees before she went back in the fray and punched an officer from behind. The beer-bottom woman ran from cop to cop, delivering further chaotic strikes. Onlooker Liang Yao described the scene as hilarious, bizarre, and disturbing all at the same time. Yao added, "The drunks were falling all over the place. The police didn't seem to know what to do, and then this woman yelling obscenities waded in, revealing all." 6 people were charged with affray, disturbing the peace, and drink driving, while Chen-li also faced charges for exposing herself. Number 8. Amanda Meyers.
Does it have to go that far? I'm a cop too. I know how that works.
In February of 2020, the police in Palmer, Ohio, were dispatched to a local bar after receiving reports of a minor traffic accident in the parking lot. Upon their arrival, law enforcement encountered Amanda Meyers, a Kelly's Island police officer who claimed to have been working a side job at the bar that day. Meyers, who'd reportedly been involved in the fender bender, proceeded to name-drop other public officials in an attempt to validate her story to the other officers and prevent them from questioning her level of intoxication. She stated that she knew the owner of the bar and indicated that his brother is the prosecutor. He knows the mayor. We're all cool. Meyers admitted to having 2 or 3 drinks over the course of the day, but refused to submit to any sobriety tests. Despite her attempts to use her law enforcement position to avoid getting into trouble, the 29-year-old woman was ultimately taken into custody. She was charged with 3 misdemeanors: operating a vehicle under the influence, refusal with a prior conviction, and reasonable control. Subsequent reports indicated that Meyers had only been convicted of the latter charge, but it wasn't made clear what the extent of her consequent penalties were. Number 7. Martin Hyde. On February the 14th of 2022, Florida police officer Julia Beskin pulled over a vehicle in Sarasota that she'd clocked traveling at nearly 30 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. Beskin approached the car and informed its driver, Republican congressional candidate Martin Hyde, of his alleged infraction. In an attempt to avoid a ticket, the man indicated that he knew the police chief, telling Beskin that she was making an unwise career decision by pulling him over. The officer then told Hyde that she didn't recognize him before calling a traffic stop in to her dispatcher. Beskin claimed that the man was being extremely uncooperative and told the dispatcher that she'd given him a total of 3 tickets, 1 for speeding, 1 for failing to produce a valid registration, and another for texting while driving. In the officer's body cam footage, the congressional candidate was later shown insulting Beskin's immigrant status, demanding to speak with her supervisor and repeatedly accusing her of lying about his traffic violations. In a further display of indignation, Hyde attempted to use his perceived influence to get out of receiving the tickets, asking Beskin if she knew she was dealing with a congressional candidate. In the incident's aftermath, Hyde uploaded an apologetic social media post in which he admitted, "I have faults, and one of them is to be overly aggressive on occasion when I'm challenged." On August the 23rd of 2022, Hyde lost in the primary of Florida's 16th congressional district election, only garnering roughly 14% of the vote. Number 6. Darlene Bradley. The mayor of a small city in central Florida was taken into police custody in December of 2017 after it emerged that she'd been using dead people's disabled parking permits to park at City Hall. The Polk County Sheriff's Office had initiated an investigation into the suspect, Davenport Mayor Darlene Bradley, after she'd been filmed parking in a handicapped parking space outside the government building. Investigators obtained a search warrant for Bradley's home, which led to the discovery of 2 disabled parking permits that had been issued to individuals who had already passed away. The mayor was consequently arrested on felony charges of using a deceased person's identification as well as possessing an altered or counterfeit decal. Those charges were ultimately dismissed after Bradley agreed to a plea deal in which she was sentenced to 6 months of probation and ordered to pay roughly $420 in fines. Number 5. Rodolfo Lopez Ibarra. In December of 2016, Mexican authorities apprehended Rodolfo El Nito Lopez Ibarra, the regional leader of the Beltran Leyva cartel in Nuevo Leon, Sinaloa, and Mexico City. At the time of the powerful criminal's detainment, the police also reportedly seized a level 6 armored SUV, a .38 caliber handgun, and $22,000 in cash. While he was being taken into custody, Lopez Ibarra allegedly offered law enforcement a $500,000 bribe in exchange for his release. The arresting officers refused, to which the cartel leader responded by threatening to use his criminal influence to have them murdered. The incident marked the second documented occasion in which Lopez Ibarra had attempted to bribe the police. Back in 2009, the man had been arrested along with 12 of his gunmen right before taking off from the airport in Acapulco on board a Cessna airplane. As he was being arrested with multiple firearms and a grenade in his possession, Lopez Ibarra told the officials he'd pay them $1 million if they let him go. When that proposition had been refused, the enraged drug lord vowed to exact revenge against the officers and soldiers, telling them, "You don't know who you are messing with. I am the new plaza boss." Number 4. Sandra Cunningham. On the morning of March the 4th of 2021, a New Jersey state senator was pulled over by the police after colliding with a pair of cars parked near her Jersey City residence. Prior to the incident, then 70-year-old Sandra Cunningham had represented the state's 31st legislative district since 2007. Throughout her interaction with law enforcement, the woman attempted to use her political influence and connections to avoid being punished for her actions. Immediately upon initiating the traffic stop, the officer at the scene noted that Cunningham was displaying clear signs of intoxication. She reportedly dropped a collection of cards on the ground when trying to produce her ID, then had trouble clearly stating her address and even confessed to feeling unsteady while performing a field sobriety test. The lawmaker denied having struck the parked vehicles, instead claiming to have hit a snowbank while making a turn. When the officer told Cunningham that she was being taken into custody, the state senator asked for Jersey City's Public Safety Director, James Shea, by name. Her request wasn't honored, however, and she was arrested on a DWI charge shortly thereafter. In May of 2022, after 14 months of legal proceedings, Cunningham's charges were dismissed when prosecutors decided there wasn't enough evidence to prove their case. Number 3. Humberto Benitez Travino. In the spring of 2013, it was reported that the daughter of a Mexican government official had thrown a tantrum after the owner of Maximo Bistro in Mexico City told her she couldn't be seated right away without a reservation. The young woman, identified as Andrea Benitez Gonzalez, proceeded to get even angrier when a vacant table was subsequently offered to customers who'd been waiting longer than her. For their perceived mistreatment of her, Benitez Gonzalez threatened the restaurant with governmental repercussions, indicating that her father, Humberto Benitez Travino, was the Federal Attorney General for Consumer Protection. Only hours after the incident had occurred, federal inspectors arrived at the establishment with official suspended signs per Benitez Travino's orders. The restaurant reportedly had 2 of its permits suspended, one regarding reservations and the other regarding liquor sales. The episode sparked outrage among the general public, which criticized Benitez Travino for what was widely considered an abuse of power on his part. The man's daughter was also given the derisive nickname Lady Profeco. In the wake of the incident, the following month, Benitez Travino was fired from his senior position within the Mexican government by President Enrique Peña Nieto, despite publicly apologizing for his retaliatory overreaction towards Maximo Bistro. Number 2. Monica Youngblood. New Mexico State Representative Monica Youngblood was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence of alcohol on May the 20th of 2018. In the late hours of the evening, the 41-year-old woman had been stopped at a sobriety checkpoint in Albuquerque. Officers immediately noted that Youngblood's eyes were bloodshot, and she smelled strongly of alcohol, while also indicating that she was slurring her speech. The politician was asked to perform 4 separate field sobriety tests, all of which she failed, and she subsequently refused to submit to a breathalyzer. In nearly 40 minutes of police body cam footage released in the traffic stop's aftermath, Youngblood was shown tearfully pleading with the officers not to arrest her. She also attempted to use her political positions as a legislator to appeal to the officers and escape criminal charges, stating, "I always stood up for you guys." It later emerged that in her capacity as a state representative, Youngblood had been a staunch supporter of harsher sentences for DUI offenders. She was taken into custody and, following a nearly 4-hour bench trial, convicted of aggravated drunken driving. Youngblood was consequently sentenced to 48 hours in jail, 1 year of probation, mandatory use of an ignition interlock for 1 year, attendance at DUI school, 24 hours of community service, and payment of court costs and fees. She ultimately lost her re-election bid to her Democratic challenger in November of 2018. Number 1. Kwame Kilpatrick. Kwame Kilpatrick was elected as the 72nd mayor of Detroit in 2002, after spending the previous 5 years as a member of the state's House of Representatives. The Michigan native's tenure in office, which lasted for 2 terms, was fraught with constant controversy and allegations of misconduct. During his first year, Kilpatrick was accused of organizing a wild party involving exotic dancers at the Manoogian Mansion, a city-owned property in which the mayor of Detroit resides. At one point that evening, Kilpatrick's wife arrived home unexpectedly and proceeded to physically assault one of the dancers. The mayor and other police officials were subsequently investigated for allegedly abusing their power to cover up the details of the party. In April of 2003, an exotic dancer named Tamara Green, who was said to have been in attendance at the Manoogian Mansion event, was murdered. Prior to her death, Green had been set to testify on record about the party, and it was thus theorized that she'd been killed in a deliberate hit by a member of the Detroit Police Department. To stop that from happening, Kilpatrick's tumultuous mayoral career ultimately culminated with his resignation in 2008, after he'd been accused of lying during the police whistleblower trial that resulted from the Manoogian Mansion ordeal. According to court records, Kilpatrick had falsely testified that he didn't have an affair with his chief of staff, and had also allegedly given misleading testimony about the dismissal of a deputy police chief. He was convicted of perjury as well as obstruction of justice and served 99 days in jail. 2 years later, Kilpatrick served additional time behind bars for a probation violation before eventually being indicted on new felony charges in connection to what was described as a pattern of extortion, bribery, and fraud by some of the city's most prominent officials. The former mayor was ultimately convicted of 24 counts, including mail fraud, wire fraud, and racketeering, and was consequently sentenced to 28 years in federal prison. In January of 2021, President Donald Trump commuted Kilpatrick's sentence, allowing him to obtain release 20 years early without having his conviction vacated. He was, however, still subject to almost $4.8 million in restitution payments, as well as the 3 years of probation handed down in his original sentence. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be hunted down by Terminator or by RoboCop? Let us know in the comments section below.